So I hope you can hear me because my kid's in the other room doing a cello lesson on Zoom. That's the kind of family I'm in now.
Well, at least it's the next room.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. And so who we got today? We're speaking to Stewart today, aren't we? Stewart Copeland.
We are amazing. I'm quite excited, actually. The first time I ever saw Stewart Copeland, I walked straight out. I think I mentioned this story on one of our early episodes. It was I went down in the open hanker, and they were playing a band called The Police, and I poked my head in.
Hanker.
Yeah, they said the open wanker.
Yeah.
And the open wanker. That's another place. I've been there.
That's a jazz club.
And I looked in, and I thought, nah, it's rubbish. And we walked out. So and then he turned out to be one of the best bands in the world.
One of the best, yeah. There's a rumour that my old mate Jake LeMessurier taught him how to play reggae, but I'm not going to bring that up. What I want to talk about is the fact that his dad was actually CIA station chief in Beirut.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, let's get going. Welcome to the Rockonteurs.
Well, it's a big tune for sure. I actually wrote that originally for Tina Turner.
Of course, I had gone and found Joni Mitchell down in Florida and brought her back.
You know, what people forget about Bowie is that he was such a kind man.
Remember me? I'm in a band now. It's called Roxy Music.
You know this thing about the 10,000 hours of experience?
Oh, yeah.
Get good at something. When we recorded Arnold Lane, we'd done about 50 hours.
The Rockonteurs podcast with Gary Kemp and Guy Pratt.
Hello, Stuart. So, right, where to begin? First, how is it where you are? Well, we know how it is where you are. It's insane.
Well, 3 times a day I remember to consider those who are not enjoying the apocalypse as much as I am. Some of us are blessed to have a livelihood which allows us to stay home, and others of us have to go out into the pestilence. And my heart goes out to them, and I need, like I say, to be reminded of them often. It's a very much K-shaped apocalypse.
I mean, but it also sort of creativity sort of finds a way, and I'm sure you were frustrated in some respects. I mean, were you meant to be out playing live at all?
Yes, like everybody, I had shows, but I also had desk work, which is a really strange happenstance that not many people know this, but I've got a side job unexpectedly as an opera composer. And
I do know that. Yes, you've done that for quite a while, haven't you?
Yeah, well, so I wrote an opera for Germany, for the Deutsche National Theater, and then they were blown out by COVID, so that's going to open next summer. Meanwhile, as soon as I finished that, I started another one for an Italian company about witches, and that opens up. So I've been very busy at my desk.
So do you write the libretto as well?
Not this time. I do sometimes, but I actually have a guy who's better at it than me.
For those who don't, libretto is the lyrics in opera, isn't it?
Yeah, libretto.
It's also a type of waistcoat that Gary likes.
Oh, really? The libretto. Do you have the mauve libretto with gold?
Yeah. Those days are over. You said you'd never mention them again.
Yeah. By the way, during the course of this conversation, I may lean on you for some style tips because I know that's something a strong suit of yours.
Well, actually, fun enough, because there's something I heard you say. Because I remember, Stuart, you once said we were talking about having to go to meetings or something, and you said you just get the Prada suit. You just go down to it and get the Prada suit. And then I heard you in an interview, and I know it's true because I've always a sucker for the blue Prada suit. But in an interview, you described the police as being a Prada suit made of barbed wire.
Yes. You've been in the band.
Which I thought was very, very good.
Now, Guy sort of is on the side and probably is able to escape the angst of the band dynamic. Which can be
yes,
right, yeah. Well,
this is true. This is something that I thought we were going to come to at some point because having been involved with one of the most angsty band dynamics of all time.
No, hey, my band,
but not directly involved. No. I'm talking about the band I'm associated with, but don't have to deal with. Whereas you two are absolutely
we're at the heart of it,
front and center at the heart of.
I don't think the
angsty bands.
Police never ended up in court, did they? They never ended up in court, you guys.
Well, I hope you found, as I did, that after all the hit years, then you grow up, you have a family, you realize that there's more to life than whether I get to play a drum fill or not, and then love returns into the equation. and that in my band, all of our angst is no more. We are all very lovey, and we hug often.
Oh,
I mean, I
really?
can
Wow.
see that you're cool with your brother. How about that singer guy?
Yeah, no, we're currently estranged. I think it's fair to say.
Is Guy whistling?
I, yeah. Listen, I mean, we've tried it on. We've tried it on. I think it was difficult even back in the '80s, to be honest. But we had a working relationship.
We had something, Gary. We had something called band therapy,
Did you?
and it worked. I heard that the Stones had like a band therapist,
Did you
and
really?
when we were out on our reunion tour at each other's throats, I figured, wait a minute, we're having the best tour ever, playing stadiums and what have you, and the whole schmear. Why are two guys here really miserable? At the two people at the center of it all. And so we got a band therapist, and it worked. We sat together, we looked into each other's eyes, we actually put our hands on each other's hearts. I know that's a bit squishy.
No, I like
But
this.
it
This is
worked.
amazing.
And we said things that, for 20 years we've been seeking vulnerable places to insert the dagger, and thinking that both of us are very arrogant and so on. And so I never thought that I ever landed a blow, and it turns out that every blow landed and left a deep wound. And so there we are, confessing to the pain and anguish, and we figured out what it was that we were arguing about, and have been getting along famously since.
Wow, what an exorcism! I know Metallica did that. So did you
That's
take
what I was
this?
going to say. There was the Metallica movie, isn't there?
Yeah, some kind of monster.
Did
Heck
you
of a movie.
take him on the road with you or her?
Well, I had to take him on the road. Oh, I thought you were talking about Sting. Yeah, we kind of had.
Yeah, we tried it. We tried it without.
Clark Kent just wasn't selling, right?
That's right. Yeah, we better call that bass player in.
Yeah. So did you take him on the road, the therapist?
No, we had a session. Actually, we actually had two. One of them worked for about a week, and we were at each other's throats again in no time. And then we got this other lady, and we had a session, which it just changed everything. It was amazing.
But
Because
when's this? Is that last big tour then you're talking
The
about?
last big
back
tour,
in the
yeah.
80s?
Oh, no, 2007, right?
yeah,
Oh, 2007.
2008 or 9 or both.
Was Andy like the shared child, like looking through the railing, the banisters, saying, "No more, mummy, daddy"?
No, Andy, whenever there was conflict, and that was great for Andy because he could pick a side. It was like Chinese democracy, And,
Right.
and then cause the problem that we had all along was that Sting and I both have a very shallow reservoir of bile. Neither of us can keep a towering rage lasting for very long. I guess you'd call it towering rage dysfunction. And so within 20 minutes, we've kind of what was it we were shouting about? I forget. I mean, you soon think of something else to remind me. I mean, it didn't, the peaceful didn't last very long either. But so Andy'd get all excited when Sting and I are shouting and screaming. And then to his disappointment, he turns around and we're hugging again.
All right.
Do you think it's because you had two strong you had two alphas?
Actually, Andy was no non-alpha. Andy is total.
No, that's what I mean. But I mean you and Sting.
Yeah. I mean, no, we realized what the conflict was. And he thought that I was jealous. And that's just wrong. I was the youngest sibling. I was totally happy at the back of the stage. That was not it. And he assumed, since he's the eldest, and what it was he was writing great songs and he was getting really good at it. And less did he feel the need to compromise. He knew how to make a hit record. And by the way, he did know how to make a hit record. And most annoying of all was occasionally he would show up to record an album with demos that we could have just released as they were and had hits, which induced a homicidal rage, as I'm sure you understand.
Although, we'll talk about it later, but your drum style was so unique and offered so much to that sound of the Police. I mean, what we had here with the Police was, this incredible songwriter who's like a power pop kid, and then you offering up all that kind of really, quite, reggae at times and jazz and other times, and then Andy playing this sort of high harmonic style.
Yeah, he had very fancy chords.
Well, you also did more for the Roland Space Echo, didn't you? Between you, than.
Well, that was a story. One day in 1978, we were over there touring across the land in America, and the phone call comes in that back home, the checks, the record company deposited the check. We are now 3 wealthy young men. And we happened to be in New York City that day. And so we went straight down to Manny's on 47th Street, which is a huge music store.
Ah, yes.
I'm sure you both know. It's not there anymore.
No.
And we went there and we bought everything in triplicate. Fender Stratocaster, I'll have one, so will I. Well, Andy already had one. So we got the Roland Echo, 3 of them, the Roland Jazz Chorus amp, 3 of them, the Taurus bass pedals. Okay, only 2 of them. I don't want those.
But hang on, are you saying you didn't have a Space Echo when you began?
No. Well, Andy had the original Echo Plex. But then Roland came along with like the updated version of it. And that afternoon, we took all of our booty out to Long Island, where we had a show, a place that you may remember called My Father's Place.
Oh, right.
And we had the sound check from hell with everyone trying out their new toys. And there am I on the drums, and I got my new Stratocaster and my Echoplex, but I'm the drummer in the band, and nobody wants, and I got my amp, but nobody wants to hear that. Wait till I get home. But I want to play with my toys. So I plug my snare drum into the Echoplex. And da 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 da, and you could, wow, I can build up a rhythm and do some live dub. So I had a foot pedal. I could turn the Space Echo on and off, and I got a whole groove going with the slapback, the delay line on the snare drum.
Fantastic.
And eventually it got too much. I was putting it on the kick, putting it on the tom-toms, putting it in my T. It was kind of a cool trick.
But you liked activating things live, didn't you? And you did that great movie with all those films where you'd filmed yourself during gigs.
Yes.
Which was all remote activated, which is so cool.
Yeah, I got a movie camera. That was the next. Actually, no, I got the movie camera earlier, I think. That was the first bit of extra dosh. I got this little movie camera and shot everything that moved. And it was sort of like the tourist thing where, you know what it's like, that rise, the rocket ship that is a rising rock band is an amazing experience. And you just want to scrape some of it off, put it in your pocket and take it home.
Do you know what? I watched that movie and I felt an affinity. There's something we had in common in that the goofing, clowning around, and it goes back to maybe this discussion we were having earlier about how do bands deal with each other when you're the egos of men, and I know that was how we sort of acted in Spandau. A lot of goofing, a lot of clowning, but it was really just to try and keep everything light and ignore all the shit that was underneath that was bothering us.
Yeah, I mean.
And there's a kind of sadness about that, we see that. Even the Beatles were the same, when.
But the Beatles started it, didn't they? The kind of clowning thing. That's where that comes from.
Well, I'll bet you Manfred Mann also clowned, and so did the Kinks. It's just sort of there's a unique camaraderie of 3, 4, 5 guys stuck together in the van, and when you rise to the top, sure, you're like siblings, or you're like a married couple without the sex. Goddammit, married to 2 other guys, So the clowning around kind of loosens it up a bit. And actually, that's the weird thing is I remembered from looking at all this footage, I guess I didn't pick up when we were screaming at each other, I failed to pick up my camera. That's probably the real excuse. But all of the footage we have from these supposedly angst-filled years was actually pretty cheerful. We were clowning around and goofing off and enjoying the ride.
But of course, now there will be someone filming everything, wouldn't there?
But no, there's a difference, though. The difference between that MTV documentary, damn, I'm showing my age, that documentary about the group is that this camera was in the group and it was like a first-person shooter. When you watch the movie, Andy's shouting at you.
You were like a CNN embedded reporter, weren't you, really? But
that's
also
right. Well,
in the army, taking shots.
That's right. The fans are screaming into the camera. And so when you watch the movie, you are Stewart.
Gary and I, now through the band we're in together, Nick Mason's Sourceful of Secrets, have now find ourselves in this prog world, which is something which, of course, was a dirty word for years. And it's now fantastic embraced place. And, of course, so now you can finally talk about Curved Air.
I am out of the closet. Ladies and gentlemen, I am emerging from the closet. I am proud to be prog.
Come on.
I was married to Sonia Christina which makes me absolutely blue chip certified prog.
I think we might use that clip in our new intro. That was great. Proud to be prog. It's the prog AA, isn't it, or whatever it was.
But it's true. It was.
Yeah.
It's true. Because I remember when I knew that about you back that when I was a police fan in my sort of post-punky days, and there was that thing that like you had to ignore that you'd been in Curved Air.
No, I didn't ignore it. I denied it.
Hang on, there's some weird thing. You tour managed Curved Air as well, and then the drummer ends up tour managing the Police. Is that? Am I confused about that?
Both those sort of. I managed a band called Cat Iron way back, in the days of Milk and Honey. This band never, sank without a trace, but the drummer was a good buddy, and he eventually became, Tim Kerner's name was, he became the Police's tour manager. But Curved Air, I was Curved Air's tour manager, and then the drummer Florian Pilkington Mixa, who was independently wealthy, he just didn't want to do it anymore, so he left. And as the tour manager,
which is the proggest name ever.
Coolest name. I just slotted
it's no proggest name.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, actually, that's absolutely true, because that was the problem with prog, is that it was all these posh public school boys. When Spandau were starting out, was it still in the thick of the spit hurling phase of punk rock? Were you gobbed upon?
Well, when we were in our initial phase, just as kids, we were called other things like the Makers and the Roots, and then we experienced a little bit of that. But then by the time Spandau came along, we were part of that whole Blitz crowd, and we were purposely not doing those gigs.
Steve Strange.
So with Steve Strange, and of course, we played the Blitz and we played Unusual Places. But you more than any other band threw yourself. I know we're sort of jumping backwards and forwards here, but you more than any other band in that era threw yourself into touring, didn't you? I mean, you did gig after gig, and that's how you broke the world, really.
Yeah, you know what it's like, though. I mean, that's what you live for. That's sort of your raison d'etre.
Also, the joy of being a trio, isn't it? Is you can just bung it in a car, right?
That's right. That's that's my stock answer for why only three guys. Well, because you can fit in a car with a driver. Nobody, in Curved Air, Sonia had to sit on the hump in the back seat.
So listen, I think we have to go back, right, just to find out who you are, because you started off touring. You were
trying to figure that out.
You were always traveling, weren't you? As a kid when you were born, and Guy was telling me earlier your dad was a spy. I want to know more.
It's a station chief, wasn't he? CIA station chief.
Yes, that's right. He would have taken umbrage at spy because that, he didn't have the upturned collar. He was more into cocktail parties and regime change in the Middle East. He was when I was born in a suburb of Washington D.C., which is basically a suburb of the CIA, McLean, Virginia. My daddy was away on business. He was installing Gamal Abdel Nasser as dictator of Egypt. And a couple months after I was born,
so is this your fault? Sorry, no. Let's talk.
Partially, yes, I take responsibility for Suez.
Well, it's about time.
Yeah, somebody's got to stand up. The buck stopped here. But I mean, so I was shipped to Cairo at the age of 2 months, and I didn't get back to the States till I was 18. From Cairo to Beirut, Lebanon, and then when my father's cover was blown, and Kim Philby was busted and escaped to Russia, and it all got weird. So I was shipped off to darkest Somerset, to boarding school in Somerset. And then I didn't get back to the States till I was 18.
And then I have this image that you're called one day and you go to a private meeting and this sort of shadowy person says, "Stewart, we have a plan for you. There's this band called the Police."
Yeah, exactly.
That's right. It was a government funded effort to pervert the youth, the modern youth. In fact, I now realize it was a Soviet-funded thing to tear down society.
So how did you find out you were a drummer?
It came and found me, actually. My father was a musician before he was a spy, and he was a jazz trumpeter. In fact, I'm looking at his trumpet right now. I've still got it. And it's a pretty fancy trumpet, too, for a kid out of Alabama. He must have been a pretty good session player. But he felt like his true nature, in between deposing governments, was that he was a musician, an artist. I just want to sing, or rather play jazz. And so he raised me to be a jazz musician. In fact, they filled the house with musical instruments. And like I said, I was the youngest sibling. And none of the other kids, my brother Miles, nor my brother Ian, nor sister Lenny, got into the instruments. So when I came along, they were mostly broken, or I soon broke them. And just kind of picked up every instrument and played a bit of guitar, the piano, the trumpet, everything. But mostly I was just banging on stuff. And so on an off chance, my father rented me a drum set from an Armenian jazz strip, kind of a strip joint drummer, and got me lessons. And I joined a group called the Black Knights in Beirut. We played the British Embassy Beach Club, the American Embassy Beach Club, the American Community School, and so on. There was actually kind of
what kind of music? What kind of music?
We played Kinks, James Brown, Animals. What's that one? I feel good.
I feel good. I feel James Brown.
Fuck, how many bums are there?
Did Miles and you sort of have a shared musical thing?
Well, my brother Ian was in there too. Ian was the coolest kid in Beirut. He was the most notorious motorcycle thief. And and he got kicked out of the American Community School, which meant that I had to leave too, and we were sent off to the English Community School, Manor House. And so Ian was the coolest kid, but Miles was like the breadhead of the family, and he just wanted to manage stuff. In fact, he had a judo school that he was working on, and I was just the kid brother. And when the band, the Black Knights, the kid who played drums had his family got restationed back to America or something, and there was a vacancy, and sure they wanted Ian to be the drummer, and there was their drum set. I think I had one, but he couldn't play it, and it was that weird thing of he'd get on and try to play the drums and couldn't get it together, and then he'd roar off on his stolen motorcycle, and I'd get on the drums, and I could do it. Now wait a minute, that's not right. This is not. How could I possibly be doing something that my big brother and hero can't do? I must be doing it wrong. But anyhow, Ian soon figured that out, and he was my agent in later years as well. But even when I was 12 years old, he was my agent. 40 years later, he was probably your agent too. Um, he was one of the biggest agents booking rock shows across. In fact, he was the guy who created the British invasion of the late 70s and early 60s. He brought over Squeeze, Police. I would be very surprised if he wasn't Spandau's agent as well.
Yeah, no, I think I think that we did have a connection at some point in the States. Absolutely, in the early days. Yeah. I can't now. You've said it. So, how did you end up escaping all of this and ending up in Curved Air? And then we'll get on to the Police in a minute. But I mean, what did you come back when you came back at 18?
Well, I was in boarding school in England, and then I went to college in America, and I was in California, and I would come home for the summer to England because my family still lived in England. And one time I came home for a summer, and I had a room where I played drums in our house, which was all soundproofed and everything. And I ran into the violin player, Daryl Way of Curved Air, and we started a band called Stark Naked and the Car Thieves, one of the coolest band names ever, which was my brother Ian's band in Vietnam when he was a soldier there. Anyhow, but then Curved Air reunited to pay off a VAT bill. And he went back, and since my band...
I don't think people that realize how important VAT has been to the music business, just how many records and tours have been for the VAT.
That's right, to pay off the VAT bill. And so they did a tour, and since I wasn't doing anything, and I did actually have tour managing chops, I insinuated my way to be the tour manager. And then when Florian took off, I slipped on. You see, one of the things you have to learn as a drummer is how to get rid of the other guy, because there's only one drum set. Guitarists can plug into the other hole in the amp, but drummers need to develop the skill of nuking the other guy. So I got in there.
I love that.
So I got in on the drums with Curved Air,
and then punk happened, right?
Then punk happened.
So what did you?
Because you've said before, Stuart, that what you liked about punk was that you loved Jimi Hendrix, right? And you saw a correlation there.
Well, the wild energy of Jimi Hendrix was different from the flower child thing because I was a little bit too young for the hippie generation. By the time I was, eligible to be a hippie, it was old and stale and just lame,
Yeah.
and too many notes and too noodly and too up itself and too, dare I say it, prog. Even though I'm proud to be prog, it was a little.
We know what you mean. We know what you mean.
And and so the energy, the raw power of energy, and the other thing was that Curved Air, we, like everybody, guys, you need a hit. Let's get a hit producer. So the hit producer came out, and the first thing they did was turn my drums into sludge. At that time, the fad was for the fatback. Ba, ba, and I don't. That's just like I'm the wrong guy for that.
Who is the hit producer?
Well, they were out of Criterion Sound. They'd produced Joe Walsh and Howie and something Albert, the Fat Alberts, they call themselves. And
Really?
they didn't understand that Curved Air was not Jackson Browne. The Curved Air was about noodly violin solos playing songs called Vivaldi.
Yeah.
And in weird time signature.
You needed an English producer, really.
Yeah, so they tried to turn us into Little Feat. And I'm a big fan of Little Feat, okay? Don't get me wrong. But Curved Air, wrong band.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of a rebellion there. So Curved Air was kind of in that strange position where everything we did cost us money. If we record an album, we're deeper in debt. We play a show, we're deeper in debt. We do a photo session, anything related to being in a band, and our nut was growing with the record company. And there was a slump in the record industry. I think the cost of vinyl went up or something like that.
Oh, wasn't it something to do with the petrol?
Yeah, wasn't it for the OPEC thing?
Petrol equals vinyl. That's where vinyl comes from. So the music industry crashed, and all the prog groups such as Curved Air, Caravan, Stack Ridge, a band called O.
I remember them. I saw them quite a few times. I like those. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't.
This is a game people of our age can play. Okay, yeah. I say Climax Blues Band, and you say Caravan, and I say Renaissance, and you say your turn.
Pentagon. Pentangle.
Pentangle. Oh, you son of a Hawkwind.
ICU. Nick Turner's ICU.
Isotope.
Van der Graaf Generator.
Van der Graaf Generator. You get double points for Van der Graaf Generator.
I still can't believe there was never a prog band called Schrodinger's Cat.
Nor Evil Edna's Horror Toilet.
We need to get onto the Police. How on earth do you end up in the Police? Starting the Police?
Well, we were just arriving at that portal where the old wave was rancid. The music business was going out of business. All the bands like Caravan, Curved Air, Stack and Ridge, Van der Graaf Generator, we all had Camel.
We're never getting off this.
Sorry.
Along from the gutters of London arose this foul-smelling punk phenomenon where the kids are like, they can only play 3 chords and not very well. In fact, there was an advertisement for, the adverts know 3 chords, the damned know 2. Come see all 5 of them at the Roundhouse.
Well, I remember it was when Musicians Wanted ads went from being kind of a Guitarist Wanted, not on heavy trip, no time wasters, and it then changed to Guitarist Wanted, no beards.
No hair. Short hair. Yes, I actually did answer such ads, and I could see this going on. In Curved Air, we were just drifting off into nothing. And meanwhile, at the Roxy Club on Neal Street in London,
yes,
this scene happening. It's just wild, exciting. People my age, not older than me, younger than me. Minnows amongst whom I could be a shark. Indeed.
He says with some cynicism.
I thought this is the word. Well, it was entirely cynical. I will confess that it was entirely cynical. And I thought first of all, the energy was right for where I was at emotionally and age-wise as well. But I did have chops, which disqualified me from being a genuine punk. And so,
but you were loud and aggressive, and that really helped you, didn't it?
That aggression, that's the Jimi Hendrix thing. And it suited me perfect. I saw the Damned, Johnny Thunder's Heartbreakers. It was just an exciting scene down there. And I want to do this. The other part that was cool was that it was do it yourself.
Yes.
We would play the Roxy for 15 quid, or the Hope and Anchor, or Rebecca's in Birmingham, or any of these places where they, and okay, that's 7 for the PA, 3 for the truck, and that's like 9 quid. Well, okay, like 2 for the curry dinner.
Yeah.
And that's actually money in our pockets at the end of the night. Whereas in Curved Air, like I said,
those extra prawn crackers are still eating you away, aren't they? Though.
That's right.
Who ordered those?
Yeah, I still have, because I'm like that. I've still got my accounts, my papers, and I've still got the accounts. We played a big gig. 25 quid. 7 for the PA, whatever for the truck, 2 for dope, 3 for the curry, and then we'd actually
cans of warm Skull.
Yeah, we'd actually put money into our pockets. And a buddy of mine lent me a record to record a song called what was it called? Fallout. And we recorded our gosh darn selves. And I found the record plant my gosh darn self. And I took the pressing to there, and I retrospect, cut some pictures up, made a cool out sleeve. But I didn't realize you're supposed to design and print the sleeve before you print the record, so that you can take the acetate to the record plant as well as the sleeve, and they put the record into the sleeve. So the first 2,000 Police records, Sting, Henry Padovani, our first guitarist, and I sat there taking them out of the white sleeve and putting them into the picture sleeve.
Wow. And
then I'd call up the record stores around England. And the record store in Liverpool, they say, I call up, I got this new band, we're called, are they punk? Yes. Okay. Is it got a picture? Yeah. Have you got short hair, long hair? Short hair. Good. Send me a box of 25.
Fantastic.
And so I was there on the phone selling boxes of records. And the money would come in, and I'd actually split the money up. We were making more money in the Police doing it ourselves than we ever made in Curved Air, where we were all on salary and we had 10 roadies.
Chris Blackwell started, didn't he, by Island Records, by selling his own pressings out of My Boy Lollipop out the back of a van.
Really? That was him?
Did you miss the bit about meeting Sting? We all need to know this moment when the stars aligned,
Well, back in the Curved Air days, we played Newcastle. And Newcastle, as you all know, is that one gig too far. When you play Liverpool, you can drive home that night. Manchester, you're down the M6, you pull into the Blue Boar for double egg, sausage, chips, beans, and a slice. But Newcastle is just that little bit too far, and so you got to overnight. And so we overnighted in Newcastle, and on our night off, a local journalist who kind of fancied Sonia took us to the local Polytechnic, which had a gig in this band we got to see called Last Exit. And they actually were pretty good. They were like a jazz band. But the main thing about them was noticeable was this golden shaft of light descending from the heavens, alighting upon his magnificent brow. And I just saw, my God, meal ticket. And so, it was obvious. And he was a bass player, and he could sing a bit. And I thought, well, that's a free seat in the car. But I always wanted it to be a 3-piece anyway. Meanwhile, punk was going on in London, and I was trying to start a band. And I saw that guy, and I thought, he's useful. So sometime later, I called him up. I called up the journalist. Phil Sutcliffe was his name. And I called him up and said, that bass player, Sting. He said, oh, no, I'm not giving you his number. You'll entice him down to London and break up our great band. And, oh, no, I'm not giving you, because I know I've heard about, you're into that punk thing, which is because we had arguments in Curved Air about punk, and I was saying it was cool, and they were saying it was the enemy. And so he wouldn't give me the number.
Oh, wow.
So anyhow, and half an hour goes by. I said, gosh darn it. And I called him back. And his girlfriend answers, oh, no, Phil's not here. Can I help in any way? Well, yeah, that guy Sting. Oh, yeah, Sting. Yeah. Isn't he amazing? Well, can you give me his number? Hang on a minute. Here, 043171. And I called him. He at that time was dying to get out of Newcastle, get down to the big smoke. And so I fast talk him and, gave him the impression that I had it all going on. I got a record company. I got this cool band named The Police, and we got it all figured out. We're going to be rich and famous. Just, come on down. He said, I'll be there Thursday. And he came down Thursday. So we hang up, and I think, shit, I got to get a band together. Who am I going to, So I found this friend of mine who played like a couple chords on the guitar and had recently dropped acid and cut his hair. And so, all right, you're in. That was Henry. and I showed him E8.
I worked with him in the early 80s. I did a whole day's work with some band he was trying to put together. It was great.
Great guy.
So,
He was the only real thing. The rest of us were charlatans in the police. He was the only real thing. Anyhow, I showed him E, A, and D because I told Sting I had a whole we're a band. We got all the material, everything, and I had these crap songs that I'd written. But I had to show him the A, E, and D, and G as well. To be, that's like verging on jazz,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're on thin ice there.
Yeah, really. So he pretended that I said, yeah, it goes to G there, and Henry would pretend, oh yeah. I just showed him yesterday, and Sting wasn't fooled at all. But something happened. That guy plugged into that Fender Bassman, and ripped it up, and we just, it was just obvious this is happening, and so the rest is history.
Where would that have been? Would that have been one of the fabulous grunge old rehearsal rooms that we all knew and loved?
No, it was in my fancy digs in Mayfair, a couple blocks from Hyde Park. In fact, I was squatting, a very fancy squat, a 2-story apartment. And
were you really squatting, or was it someone you?
No, I really.
Okay.
Well, it was a fancy version of a squat. It was like my father knew this woman who had this fancy apartment. She was a journalist. She had invited some people to stay. They never left. How can we get rid of them? My father says, well, my son has a punk band. And so I moved. So they didn't move out, but I moved in. We did a session for Mike Howlett, who was in Gong, which is a band that somebody should have said Gong.
No, we love Gong. We love Gong.
So Mike Howlett, their bass player, had a session making an album, and for some reason he wanted it to be a two bass player thing. So he got Sting the gig, and Sting brought me along, and the guitarist on the session. This is when we knew this is a big deal. Walks in this triple scale guitarist, the cream of London musicianship, Andy Summers, and he comes in all of his majesty and nails his part. And we get kind of a thing going. And then when we did this gig with Gong in Paris, where it was like everybody in Gong and their spin-off groups. And we were short of material, learned a couple of police songs. And then I run into Andy in the tube, in the underground. I get out of the underground, and there he is.
Oh, mate.
Yeah. And he says, Stewart, let's have a talk. And he pulls me into the cafe. And he hates this version of the story, but I tell you, it is true. Not only is it true, but it shows Andy's great personality. Stewart, look, you and that bass player, I think you got something, but you need me in the band, and I accept. So I called Sting. Remember that Andy Summers? He wants to be in the band, and Sting just flipped out. Are you kidding? My God, saved music at last. At last, we can make some music. And it was calm down. We can't afford him. He's going to expect roadies. And I told Andy, I said, dude, I'm flattered, thank you, but we don't have any management. I'm the management. We don't have a record company. I'm the record company. We don't have any roadies. You're the roadies. And to his credit, he said, nope, I'm going to throw in all my sessions. I'm sick of being a sideman. I want to be in the group. I want it to, and I'm in. I didn't believe him. And so when I told Stingo, he says, he's in. And I said, Sting, no, he's going to leave in 2 weeks and we'll be screwed. And it's not going to, but Sting said, he's in or I'm out. Okay. So now we got 2 guitarists, much less room in the car.
This is when I saw you. This is when I sneaked my head around the corner in the Hope and Anchor. When you had that little post on the wall saying, may the force be with you. And I thought, who's on tonight? And I looked around and I saw 4 guys on stage in a pretty empty room at that point. And I went, nah.
Oh, totally, yeah. I don't think we ever managed to fill the Hope and Anchor.
What was the vibe like when it was Henry and Andy together? I mean, how?
Andy said, look, okay, I am going to get rid of him. There's only room for 1 guitarist in this band. And so, we tried to schmuss that over. But it didn't last. And eventually, because as soon as he could play fancy chords, Sting's musicality just woke up like, you see, this was the thing. I thought he was a bass player who could sing a bit. And I had no idea how well he could sing because he was singing these crap punk songs that I wrote. I don't want to. I had no idea that he could carry a tune. And so a couple things happened. One is that we got an Andy session. He canned all of the sessions except for this one guy in Germany who does tours and pays such great money that he can't say no. And by the way, he got me and Sting on board as the band with this thing. So we went over to Germany and played a very prog show, very conceptual, and he wanted us to improvise. And so far away from the critics of London and the straitjacket rules of punk, we were improvising. And that was the first time I heard that Andy could do more than just slam that riff. He actually had some really cool. And then one night, um, Sting wasn't the singer, but one night the jazz singer chick strayed away from the microphone. Sting walks up and gets on the microphone while we're jamming, and the sound that came out broke every heart. The birds stopped their flying. The butterflies, and it was just every heart.
Angels wept.
The angels wept, and our hearts were. And Andy and I are in. What? Whoa! Wow! And so when we got back to London, Sting was writing these songs. I think the first one was "Born in the '50s." Great, let's do that.
Which is actually still the most straight ahead punky Police
Yeah,
song.
we hadn't fully departed yet. And then he came up with "So Lonely." Then he came up and just like I didn't see this coming because up to that point I was a band leader. I'd written the crap songs, and it hadn't occurred to me that there's such a thing as better songs.
But what was so beautiful about what this band was it was so lean. There was no extra fat. There was no one in the band. There's no one in the band you went, who's that guy? He really, he's only there because he's got a good smile or whatever. This was the tightest, leanest band of incredible musicians, all sneaking under the radar of punk with all its wariness and fear. And because you were all incredible musicians, but you managed to just not give that completely away until you could.
Well, recently one of the other missions I've been engaged on is creating these Police songs for orchestra, because I'm all fancy schmancy now and I write music for orchestra and arrange it. And so I did these derangements for the documentary, for the Super 8 movie that I did, and I got all the Police tunes and I put the chorus of this song, bodged it together with the verse of that song, took the bass line from here, put it, basically deranged the whole thing. And so now I'm doing these derangements for orchestra, and I'm doing this tour was going to do this big tour with orchestras. And so I'm arranging these songs that Sting wrote, and they're so simple yet so sublime. And I'm expanding it out to, use the woodwinds and the brass and the strings and everything based on these very simple elements that are just, I very much enjoyed the ride that I got from those songs. And I'm very proud of the records, and I think they're pretty good, and I really like those songs. But all these years later, have a much deeper appreciation of the raw, like you said, the leanness of his songs. They're very simple, but very sophisticated and multi-dimensional at the same time as just being three notes. Dun, 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 blang.
I was going to say, because that's the one that blew my mind as a learning bass player, and in that sort of whole post-punk world. That was the one that actually blew my mind, because the thing where Sting had that thing where he would play things which were so unbelievably simple, but you could tell that he could clearly play anything. There's such that's such an incredibly brilliant talent to play nothing that says you can do everything.
Yeah, his chops did diminish a little bit. He can still play anything, but I mean, Bed's Too Big Without You. Yeah. And then there's like a whole bar of nothing, and sort of like with a microscope, years later, am I able to really appreciate his work.
But reggae was obviously a big part of your inspiration and influence. And was that coming from Sting as well, or was that something you put into the band? And there's a history in rock music of really bad reggae. Eric Clapton doing stuff maybe that wasn't quite right. But you guys managed to make that hybrid between, pop and reggae and very, white rock and pull it off.
Well, it's Don Letts must be given credit. He was a DJ in London. So Don Letts played dub, which was suitably hostile, but was chill hostile. You could be angry while chilling out. You could be chill angry. I have to also give credit to The Clash, and I always thought it was Police and Thieves, which was poetics if the police came along and thieved that idea, but it wasn't. It wasn't. It was there was some song that they did, which was an attempt. Topper Headon did an attempt, or was it Tory Crimes? I don't know.
Was it White Man? White Man and Hammersmith Palais?
Could have been, but it was an attempt at reggae. You know, I love the Clash, and I give them all respect, but it was very chunky and unfunky, and you know, all of us drummers were listening to reggae. And, wait a minute, play that again. The backbeat is with the kick on 3, and there is no backbeat. And hey, where's 1? Hide the 1. There is no 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. There's no 1. So the mechanism, the rhythmic mechanics of reggae are bass backwards. Yeah. And I had a hidden advantage because it so happens that the fundamental structure of Arabic music also hides the 1 and emphasizes the beat 3 of the bar. For your listeners, you know, music is basically 4/4 rhythm: 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, in reggae, they turn it all around. So it's 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4. There's no 1, and that's the trick of reggae, and it's also the trick of the ballady rhythms of the Lebanese mountains. And so when it came to really, that's what he's doing. It was in my DNA, and it came much more easily to me, so that I could not only slavishly reproduce the reggae rhythms, but I could kind of have fun with it and go other places. In fact, we were very unfaithful to our reggae roots. We played it wrong.
And it's a great anticipation for the drop. It's that suspension. The drop's going to come later. It's not coming when you think it is, and that's what's so satisfying.
That's true. Well, yeah, when you're playing the clubs, you have a lot more fun because you're in it. When you're playing the arenas or the theaters or the stadiums, you're separated from it all, and you know, you don't get nearly as much action, and then it gets rancid, and then it gets boring, and then one stadium looks the same as the next one. The fun part, like you say, the fun part is the early part, as you said.
I also think that there was another cute thing you did, a kind of trick that the Beatles did, where the Beatles all had the same hair. You 3 guys decided to all have the same hair, and you know, we spoke about the goofing around earlier, but that was a strong image. I remember, you know, these 3 bleached blonde. Did you obviously arguing over the peroxide?
That's right. It was an advertisement for spearmint chewing gum. Now, Sting's wife was an actress who had an agent who took one look at Sting and said, "That guy's a star." And so she would send Sting off. He was mortified by this because he felt he was a musician, not some pretty boy, even though he was damn pretty. And they'd send him off for auditions, and he'd win it every time, and was actually making money kind of as a, dare I say it, male model. So he would he would win. And one time he got this Wrigley's chewing gum, and they said, it's cool like that, but we need a band. Let's get a punk band in here. And so the rest of the show, they look a bit nice. So they peroxided all of our hair. And so there, the 3 of us are looking at each other with our bleach blonde hair. I was already kind of dishwater blonde. And we're looking at each other, and it just stuck. And the commercial disappeared. It was never seen again. But the 3 blonde heads, as we refer to ourselves, went on to fame and fortune.
I think you made 5 albums, together, studio albums. What you did, you guys, which was very, very, it's either clever or it's sad, I'm not sure, but you managed to become more and more successful with every album. You ended up with the most successful album you'd ever made, and #1 everywhere, and then you finished. And you know, that's, you know, it's like James Dean dying when he's young, or you know, you never see them grow old, and the police never got punched out in the ring.
That's true. We never saw the inevitable other side, which every band experiences. No dishonor in it. It's a young man's game. But yeah, we did break up. It just went on, and I got a career in film composing, and Sting, you know, started doing his thing. You know, basically, we never got back together again. But we never did formally actually break up. We still haven't.
Weren't there contractual things that needed to be sorted out?
Well, now that you mention it, the police owes A&M 2 more albums. Yeah, they're never going to happen, but we do technically owe them 2 more albums.
But how was it at the end? How was it between you and Sting and Andy at the end?
When the first end was very good because we mostly really got along well. But then whenever the subject turned to music, that's when we would be at each other's throats. And the reason was because we all had something to say. And it became more and more obvious that the only statement that had any relevance was Sting's songs. And he understood full well that he knew exactly before he even brought them to the band how they should go. And he wasn't wrong. But for the other two guys, that's not much fun to just take dictation. And so that rankled, and we didn't, and we fought, and we insisted on having some input into them, and we succeeded. I like to think that we improved on, even though his song was a hit, perfect, we actually managed to give it a little extra something, take a few more yards down the field. And he actually, in hindsight, it can be recognized, he was quite patient. It was the third album, Zenyatta Mondara, where it really was clear that he knew what he was doing. And yet he survived that and then two more albums where he had to put up with compromise. He knew how it should sound, and yet he had to put up with Stewart and Andy, sort of like, get off my song. But he did. He was, out of loyalty for whatever reason, he stuck with us for another two records. So
yeah, but it's not like you guys were just, you sound like any other drummer, or Andy sounds like any other guitarist. You had a real distinctive sound and identity that made his songs the ones we know, the Police.
yeah,
It's true, actually, but you are irreplaceable. There's not one element that's replaceable in that.
yes, but sure, fine. But at that point, he wasn't a bass player and singer anymore. He was a songwriter, and it was very frustrating. Sure, Stewart's great, but I've got this idea and now I've got to dilute it with somebody else's idea. Now, for me, as the youngest member of the family, that's been my life. I thrive on collaboration. I'm happiest as a member of a team. But, I guess the long and short of it is that I'm very grateful that we managed to get even 5 albums out of the guy.
I think about, my own situation with the band. I think we were at our best probably, or our happiest when I was just bringing songs in and playing them to them, singing them up, and then everyone sort of joins in the rehearsal room. And then as we kind of developed, into the situation where I was making full-on demos, the band got very unhappy. And I wonder why, look at Pete Townsend, who's always made full-on demos, but somehow the band didn't mind that seemed to work for them. But I do think there's a thing about songwriters coming in and playing the music in front of the band, which is how McCartney would have done it, I'm sure, and or Lennon, and then the band join in.
Yeah, that's sort of the way it started, but as the platinum demos, because by this time, later on, we all had, living in our palaces, we all had a full-on recording studio at home, and so we would bring in these fully produced demos. And if we'd get to Montserrat to record an album, and we were expected to bring songs, and we all wanted to bring songs, and so we would all work really hard. But if we had showed up at the studio without songs, Sting would have been very pissed off. What? I'm the only guy working here? And so even though he had no intention of playing our songs, he insisted that we all write them. And he had a trick. And Gary, I'm sure you probably used this as well. So we'd show up, and I'm dying to play the guys my songs. And I play them my songs, and I got them in a row. It's, and the first one, not bad, not bad. And the second one, and then the third one, they're staring at the floor. And by the fourth song, I can feel ouch, 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 let me out of here. Now, Stingo had a whole other scheme. He would only reveal his songs one at a time. When we had run aground with whatever we're doing, okay, guys, I got a song. And we'd immediately stop whatever foolishness we were engaged in, because we knew when he said, I got a song, that we were all going to get very rich. I'm being cynical, but we were all going to make a great record. So he would reveal his song, and we would record it right then and there. And so I realized this decades later, that all those Police albums, the last 3 Police albums, I heard that song 20 minutes before recording the drums performance that is on the record.
But every breath you take.
That's right. Actually, and Stewart. Yes, Stuart, I heard you say in an interview, which I found fascinating, you were saying how that you would hear them and then you record them on the spot and you'd only do a few takes, so that whatever, say, the drums and the guitar are on It's just that's how they are on that take. If the one that you used was the one before or the one after, it would have been a completely different
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. And of course, they got to redo all the guitars and the vocals till the cows came home and pristine. But those drums, I was stuck with for decades, and it's almost like improvised. I just hear them, Sting and Andy would have their heads over, F sharp minor, whatever that is, and I'm sure they're just talking bullshit just to keep me annoyed while they're working out the chords. I'm sort of hearing a rhythm and I'm going over in my head, and they say, "Okay, let's do a take," and we do 2 or 3 takes and use one of them, and that there, which just came up on that day, is the record that I'm stuck with for the rest of my life. But it sort of worked. We'd go out on tour, and I'd figure out how to get from the chorus back down into the verse, the cool way of making the switch, and I'd figure it out after three shows, But it's not like that on the record. But somehow the records kind of worked.
Yeah, listen. You're pretending that you don't know these chords, but now you're a great art. So come on, let's know the true. Let's hear the true Stewart Copeland. How are you making this music? Are you playing great piano first? Are you writing it down? What is it? How do you make an opera?
Well, they invented this thing called computers. And so at first, for 20 years, I was a film composer, which is how I learned what F sharp minor is for. It's only recently, in the last few years, that I've learned the names of any of these chords that I've been using all these years. And, the circle of fifths and all this stuff.
Is that another band? It's not a band now.
Right, circle of fifths. No, but I picked up these chops on the job scoring films. The director says, Francis Coppola says, it needs to be happy. Okay, happy. Dun, 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 dun. That's happy. That's happy. Okay, and here it needs to be sad. And so, 20 years, gazillion movies, I figure out how to be happy sad, how to be sad happy, how to be sad with a little touch of whimsy and an underlying cloud of doom.
But Doug, I must say, I'm sorry, but just to say, like your score for Rumblefish, where the whole thing was based around time, which of course is a great thing to give a drummer, because I've got to say, a lot of the percussion stuff on that is amazing.
Damn, you guys are well researched.
Well, I'm a fan of that. I've always loved that film, and that score is brilliant. There's something really particular about it.
Oh, well, shucks. I didn't know how you do it. I was making it up. And a lot of times the best art comes from ignorance.
Shush!
But anyway, years of that eventually. One day Francis turns around and says, "This is great, but we need strings." And at first I'm thinking, "Oh no, oh no." Then I answered, as I have taught my children, "Francis, strings? Yep, strings. I'm going to get you some strings." And so I call up the contractor and I said, "Director wants strings." And he says, "Okay, how many strings?" "I don't know. Strings. How many strings is strings? More than one, I guess." I hire these string players and I figure out these chords that I'm playing myself. And I can either play them in rhythm but wrong chord, or I can play the right chord but not in rhythm. I have to move my fingers. Let's see, this finger, that finger. The good Lord did not give me the gift of pianitude. Anyhow, I figured out these chords. The string section comes in, and I book. When you book a guitarist for the afternoon, you book him and he brings 10 guitars and a couple amps and a couple of wah-wah pedals, and you screw around. It's a fun afternoon of just finding stuff, and you hire the right guy and he gives you stuff. But when it's on the chart, and I know how to talk to. I speak guitar, and pull out the Stratocaster back pickup, man, and I give them the chat. The movie's here, and when Rusty James looks at the girl and there's a love, I need to feel kind of a love swing, and then it kind of goes out and just sort of jam on the end, kind of improvise. And they're, instead of looking happier and happier the way a guitarist would, they're looking more and more anxious. Yeah. And one of them says, "Maestro, do you want us to play?"
Because there's no black dots.
What's on the page here? These black dots, or whatever the fuck you're talking about. And I go, "Play the page." And a couple things. First of all, they were done in 20 minutes, no whole afternoon. They were in and out, done. They were very simple charts, at that point. Done. Number two, wow, that's really pretty. You mean, I put it on the page because I had gone to, I'd studied music in college. So I'd never used any of this in a full career in rock and roll, never used a chart of music ever, ever, ever. And now since I was in college, I'm now putting dots on a page. And the cool thing is that I don't need any debate. I don't need to say, they come in, their whole ethos. Yes,
They don't borrow money.
When there's no debate.
They do what you say.
They don't borrow money. They don't talk back. The only thing they can't do is, okay, who wants to take the solo?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm beginning to get from you, Stuart, is your confidence is built into your enthusiasm. You know, your passion and your kind of, you know, I want to do this. You've got so much energy still, and that's what confidence is in music, isn't it? Having that guy in the room who just believes. I mean, is that your secret?
Yeah, well, you're absolutely right, and you've got it yourself. If you don't like it yourself, you're not going to be very good at it, you know, because you need to kind of believe in yourself.
Chutzpah.
It takes a certain amount of narcissism, I suppose.
And listen, we're going to have to wrap this up, I'm sure now, but it's so brilliant to talk to you. Amazing.
Oh, thank you, Stuart. That was great, really great. And have a good lockdown.
All right, man. See you guys. Bye.
I love that. Wow, that's inspired me. I want to go out and get all my my brass up and get my saxes and my trumpets.
Your crump horn. You want to get your crump horn
I'm
out,
going to get
don't
my
you?
crump horn immediately. I'm going to have it hanging here, ready at a moment's notice to be played, to be crumped.
But we definitely, yes, and we want him on our prog band pub quiz team.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's it for this week's episode of Rockonteurs.
Thank you to Stuart, and thank you for listening. We're back next week with another superstar guest on the show.
So make sure you subscribe to the podcast and please just leave a little review. See you next week.